The pagan world of the first century is undergoing its own form of spiritual crisis.
The period of time for the early church and the years thereafter was a very interesting time for religion, a post-Olympian kind of period. The Olympian gods and goddesses that they had revered before did not have the same kind of value. People were casting about for new kinds of gods and goddesses, new sorts of beliefs that could capture their fancy and could give them hope and a reason for living beyond what they found with the Olympian gods and goddesses. And so people looked internationally to Egypt and to Turkey and to the Middle East for new kinds of religions, new kinds of gods and goddesses.
Many of the Gentiles Paul meets are already attracted to Judaism. They attend synagogue worship and even make sacrifices at the Jerusalem temple. The Jews call them God-fearers. They worship the Hebrew God, but have not completely converted to Judaism with the requisite circumcision and kosher dietary restrictions. Some of these God-fearers are among Paul's first converts to the teachings of Jesus. But the new apostle's mission rapidly extends beyond the God-fearers and beyond the confines of Jerusalem. Paul's mission to the Gentile world is perhaps the most revolutionary undertaking in the history of Christianity. Wherever he goes, Paul tailors his preaching to appeal to each new audience. He frankly states in one of his letters that he is attempting to be all things to all men. Paul brings the message of Jesus north to the Syrian city of Antioch. Here the word Christian is first used to describe the new sect and to distinguish it from Judaism. Paul changes the name of his master from the Hebrew Yeshua, a modified form of the name Joshua, to the Greek Iesus, and he translates the Hebrew word Mashiach, Messiah, meaning anointed by God, to the Greek Christos. Paul now travels west by foot, by caravan, and by ship. He makes his way through Asia Minor into Greece and finally to Rome itself, capital of the empire and center of the Gentile world.
He was really good at winning over the Gentiles because he was born in Tarsus, and so he knew the Gentile world. He knew what phrases to use in terms of their logic and how to communicate to them and how to win them over. He always carefully in his sermons began where his hearers were, and then he drew them out in the direction toward Christianity that he wanted to bring them along. And so it's a masterpiece, I think, of sermon skills, pastoral skills, approach, forensic abilities, and combining with his own natural immense intellect. He could bring it off.
As Paul travels throughout the Mediterranean, he writes letters of advice and instruction to the various churches he has founded. These letters are the first Christian scriptures, predating the writing of the Gospels by decades. But a crisis is now brewing in Jerusalem. Some claim that Paul's mission to the Gentiles has been so accommodating that it has betrayed the origins of the movement. In preaching to the Gentiles, some fear that Paul has forgotten Judaism.
Very often Christians will think what happened between Christianity and Judaism, insofar as those two religions eventually split, was that some Jews believed Jesus was the Messiah, other Jews would not, and so the big split was over the Messiahship of Jesus. That is almost totally wrong. What the split is over is the attitude towards God's law. Can we begin to decide there are parts of God's law that can be left aside?
Paul has told the Gentile converts that they need not follow kosher rules for eating. Not everyone agrees. In Jerusalem, some Christians insist that converts to the sect must follow the full extent of the Jewish law. To resolve this question, James convenes the First Apostolic Council in Jerusalem in 49 A.D. The results of this conference of Christians will determine the entire future of the new faith.
The church had to decide, how do you become a Christian if, for example, you're a Gentile? Do you have to become a Jew first? The Apostolic Council said no, Gentiles can come directly into Christianity. And that decision was of enormous importance for the future of the church.
Paul has come to an understanding with the traditionalists among the Christians in Jerusalem, but he has made himself unpopular among observant Jews. A group of Jews from Asia Minor stirs up the local populace against Paul, accusing him of profaning the Jerusalem temple. Only the intervention of a Roman tribune keeps Paul from being killed by the angry mob. Paul is imprisoned while the Jewish High Court prepares to prosecute him. Paul invokes his rights as a Roman citizen, inherited from his father, to a trial in Rome. He is taken under guard on a ship bound for the capital. As Paul approaches the mighty gates of Rome, one can only imagine his feelings as he prepares to tell the world's most powerful city that it has just killed the Messiah. Paul remains under arrest for the next 5 years, but his power of persuasion is so strong that even incarcerated, this is one of his most productive periods. The movement that started on the Pentecost following the crucifixion had already changed radically in its first 30 years. Once a small and unpopular cult, it has become a new faith. Once a Jewish sect, it has become a Greco-Roman religion. The entourage of an executed rebel has been expanded to include throngs of dedicated converts from across the known world. But a deadly backlash is about to set in. A backlash from the Roman world which Christianity has so eagerly sought to win over. The new faith is about to suffer the wrath of an angry empire. The sudden expansion of Christianity in the latter part of the first century is an astonishing success story.
It was explosive in the way that it spread. Christianity went everywhere suddenly, and it seemed like the whole Mediterranean basin, the whole Roman Empire, within a number of decades was hearing the good news of Christ.
Within one generation, the center of Christianity has moved from Jerusalem to Rome. Rome is, after all, the center of the empire. In approximately 60 A.D., Paul the Apostle arrives in Rome. Simon Peter, leader of the apostles during Jesus' lifetime, also comes to Rome to bring Christianity to the capital. But the message of Jesus will bring death to some. Christians are often executed for their beliefs. The Roman historian Tacitus describes the dangerous reputation of this new cult from Judea.
Hated for their evil practices were the group popularly known as Christians. Their deadly superstition was beginning to spring up with all kinds of sordid and shameful activities. Cornelius Tacitus, 100 A.D.